First impressions are extremely important. If I can't hook you now, you'll leave before the good parts of the video even start.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
But what about games? Can that first impression make or break it for something that millions of people have their eyes on? Something that hundreds or thousands of developers poured their heart in over the course of multiple years. Thankfully, Square Enix kindly provided us with a prime example of how to turn a promising new IP into a stinking pile of crap in the eye of the public before it even released. Well, I'm a dirty guy, and I want to find out what exactly happened with Forspoken and see just how bad it really is, so let's do some crap diving. When the first trailer to this game, named Project Athia back then, dropped in June of 2020, people were hyped, and I mean it. The game looked amazing, the concept was novel, and the star lineup of people involved made this a very promising game to look forward to. About 9 months later, the next trailer was released, which not only revealed the actual name of the game, but also showed off some of Frey's character and voice lines for the first time. While some people were concerned about her use of swearing in a fantasy setting, a character like this could easily work with some decent writing and development, and the game looked and sounded incredible, so common perception was still pretty good. Of course, the game had been delayed and would be delayed for even longer in the coming months, so the cracks were starting to show. Half a year after that, in August of 2022, the first real look at gameplay was revealed in the form of a 10-minute deep dive. The world looked empty, lifeless, and when you did see NPCs, they didn't really seem very natural. Typical troubles of an open world game, so people still gave it a pass due to the combat and traversal looking almost exactly as promised. But the hype was gone. December 9th, 2022, the day of the demo release. The day this game fell apart. I don't want to take too much away from the actual review coming up in the later parts of the video, but let me just say that this demo did a horrendous job at showing off Forspoken's combat, which is what the demo focused on. No clue how they did that, but holy crap is this not good. Not only do you not even have 1/4 of the magic unlocked to give you a feel of combining spells, it also throws nothing but the weakest enemies at you, presents a normal enemy as a boss, and the only kind of fun fight you can have here is against the mini-boss from the actual game that is way oversold here as an extra challenge. To top it all off, the demo is also set to easy difficulty, making for an overall boring, uninspired, and unrepresentative demonstration of what you would actually be playing in the full game. Fast forward to January 22nd, a few days before the game's official release. A tweet by Twitter user Nintendon that got to play the game a few days early went viral after showing a sequence of the first hour of the game that many people found cringe. This is exactly the point in time where people started to really latch on to the negative publicity this game was getting. Now, I'm not saying the clip is fine. It's probably one of the worst scenes in the entire game, but it really cemented the consensus that this game was going to suck. This was further extrapolated by even more users posting clips from the game's dialogue. At this point in time, a large portion of potential players was already turned off of the game by seeing these few snippets and the lackluster demo. When the game launched on January 24th, so did the reviews. Oh boy. The reviews. For a big AAA game years in the making, this is a rather deflating score, isn't it? What I found eye-catching, however, is the discrepancy of focus on these. Whereas most positive reviews were released a few weeks after the game launched and focused on the gameplay, story, and challenges, an overwhelming number of middling and negative reviews came out close to the game's launch and called out the dialogue and technical aspects above all else. Now, I'm not trying to throw the integrity of other critics under the bus here, but it looks to me as if a lot of them align a little too much with the comment sections of Reddit and Twitter threads following the aforementioned viral tweets. The only common denominator I can find in all reviews is that the open world seems to be uninspired and par for the course in modern open world games. So how about we throw all of that preconception out the window and see for ourselves if Forspoken is actually a good game marred by bad press, or just a giant waste of time. You know what really is a giant waste of time? Grocery shopping. All that time spent on going to stores, finding the ingredients for your food, standing around at checkout because the old lady in front of you wants to pay her $30 purchase in change only to get back home and notice you forgot something. And not to mention even finding and planning decent recipes to begin with. I hate it. All of that is time I could spend on playing more games. Thankfully, HelloFresh contacted me about trying one of their boxes that eliminate all of that. I had obviously heard of them, but never tried it out myself, so I took the bait, and to be completely honest with you, I was pleasantly surprised. Not only did I spend less than 10 minutes on deciding on what I'd eat for the week, they also sent it to me in separate bags for each recipe, so all I needed to do was actually cook the stuff according to their so detailed and oaf like me can cook it cheat sheets. And the best thing about it all, the food was really good. From burgers to pasta and chicken, they sent me a creative and varied lineup of meals for the week, and that's only what I chose. They also have a wide range of vegetarian, vegan, and seafood options. Not that I'd eat that, but it's there if you want it and work on that beach body. With a rotating selection of over 35 recipes per week, more being added all the time, you're also never going to get bored and can decide for yourself if you want to be adventurous and try something new or stick to the tried and true you've always loved to eat. A cool side effect of them sending you exactly what you need is that you'll also be throwing away less food than usual, or keep it in your fridge waiting to use the leftovers only for them to spoil because you never got around to using them and then throwing them away anyways. Sound familiar? Now I know what you're gonna say. That sounds neat, but getting all of that stuff yourself is a lot cheaper. Well, that's kind of true. Obviously, it's a business and they need to make some money. However, in the tests I've run, as in going to the store and buying the same stuff they sent me, HelloFresh was actually less than 10% more expensive than buying the ingredients myself. And some of these ingredients you can't even get in your average store. Add to that the stress-free nature of the service and saving a ton of time to spend on more fun things than adulting, I think you've got yourself an exceptional service here. And if you're still iffy about trying it out and live in the America, I've got you covered. Just click the link in the description for a special limited time discount of up to 65% off plus free shipping. That makes your first box way cheaper than store-bought, and you get all those cool benefits. And I also get a share, so you can support me and my content by saving money. How awesome is that? Let me know in the comments when you tried HelloFresh out for yourself and tell me what you think. A big thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. You guys have been awesome to work with.
Fuck that thing, fuck that, fuck everything about this place.
Now, after all that talk about first impressions and how that destroyed the game's public image, how about we just take a look at the intro in all of its 64 Metacritic score glory. Okay, so we start off with Alfred on court for larceny, and the first thing we get to do is acquaint ourselves with her previous encounters with the law. Or, as I like to call it, the game shoving lore in your face. Frey is an abandoned kid of the streets of New York who was shoved from foster home to foster home until she finally ended up as a petty criminal. She also has quite the mouth on herself and can't keep it shut for the life of her, even if it leads to trouble. However, in between these hardships, she always loved to read and even got her high school diploma, so she seems to have a good side and is smart to boot. Now, I'm not from New York and neither do I know anyone who is personally, so I only know it from movies and other media, but this is exactly how I would imagine a kid to turn out from circumstances like these. And that tells me this is extremely cliche and not at all how it would be in reality. Barely getting off the hook in court because the judge seems to like her, Frey shows off her better side when she picks up a passerby's dropped phone and gives it back instead of stealing it, and we get to see her cat Homer, who she loves more than anything. A cat in the first 5 minutes of the game? How could this game be considered bad? Moving on, Frey gets pulled off into an alley by some thugs. Seems like that larceny she was charged with was part of a bigger job, and now they're mad she messed it up. She gets beat up and held at gunpoint, but fights back. Okay, so how fucking stupid is this whole scene? Why would she fight back against 4 armed thugs when she has nothing? Also, what kind of plot armor is this when she spends literally 18 seconds climbing some railing and even takes the time to flip them off after she makes her way to the other side of that fence? She could have been shot at around 30 points during that sequence, but nothing happened. We then get to control Frey and have to run away from the thugs, introducing you to the parkour mechanics, except they don't really work well without the magic, so that sucks. Frey gets home and we finally get to see Homer. Seems like she's pretty much barely scraping by, not because she has no money, but because she's saving all that she can to bail out and start over. And she almost has enough money to pull the trigger. Well, that's certainly not a flag for something bad to happen. Oh wait, I was wrong, her house is on fire. Oh shit, we gotta save Homer! With all of her belongings, including the money, burned to dust, Frey loses the will to live. She gives Homer to the judge, asking her to take care of the kitty, and then goes off to the tunnel where she was found as a baby to commit suicide. But right at the stroke of midnight of Christmas, her birthday, she sees a shining light in a pawn shop. Investigating it, she finds a beautiful gold cup, and when she picks it up, some sort of portal opens and swallows her up, which ends the introductory chapter. On the other side of the portal lies Athia, a world of magic and monsters that is being plagued by a sickness called the Break that turns everyone that gets into contact with it into a Breakborn, a mindless zombie-like being that gets more and more physically mutated the longer they are exposed to the Break. Weirdly enough, Frey seems to be completely immune to this and is now connected to the cuff she found, and it talks to her. As if that wasn't enough, she almost gets nommed by a dragon and can suddenly use weird nature magic. During the battle with the dragon, Frey winds up at the continent's only safe haven, the city of Sepal, where she is promptly trialed and imprisoned as a heretic because she survived the Break. Freed by a girl from town named Auden, the TLDR is she gets asked to save this world from the destruction through the Break caused by the four Tantas, the now corrupted past leaders of Athia. Frey doesn't really take well to that sudden responsibility, and the only thing she can think of is getting back home. However, in searching for a way home, she inevitably has to travel the land, which gets her further and further entangled in the world of Athia. Why was I so adamant about the first impressions talk and then give you this detailed rundown of the first 60 minutes? Because this would be pretty good if it wasn't for that horrendously dumb thug scene. If they just had her tell them she doesn't want anything to do with them anymore and they would have told her, "You will regret this," and then proceed to burn her house down, Frey would have come off as much more of a lost soul. But the way this was done, she comes off as reckless and stupid, which makes her following dialogue, though one people made fun of so much, feel forced and cliched instead of genuine and relatable. If, however, you can look past this lackluster introduction, you will find that Frey is a well-written and realistic character. Sure, she is flawed. Not only is she constantly throwing insults and profanities around, but she is also very egocentric, not caring at all about being the only person capable of saving the world of Athia, but only finding her way back to her own world and Homer. But who could blame her? That cat is super cute. Why do I call her realistic? Well, just imagine how you'd freak out if you just got thrown into another world, suddenly develop magical powers, and get told you're the only person in the world who can stop the destruction because you are mysteriously immune to the sickness spreading across the land. I'd wager you would be in over your head as well and wouldn't want to be forced to go on a crazy power trip and potentially get yourself killed. Cuff, on the other side, is very eloquent, to the point of always sounding sarcastic and haughty, clashing amazingly with Frey's rough, on-the-nose style and giving them an almost comedic feel in their banter. I know not everybody enjoys them giving each other the casual back and forth in almost any situation, but I personally enjoyed it most of the time, and it felt natural, given the setting of the game and characters. That doesn't mean that there aren't any serious conversations here. There are many points in the game where Frey gets depressed, unsure what to do, and Cuff picks her up in a way that only a friend can. Over the course of the story, Frey meets a lot of characters, some more interesting than others, but the focus always stays on her. A double-edged sword, because you will get to see the tremendous trouble, pain, and growth she goes through, but your enjoyment of said story will be very much dependent on if you can sympathize with her or not. Without going too deep into spoiler territory, let me just say that while Frey is and will always stay a potty mouth, she does go through some very interesting character development that you don't often see in games. By far the most interesting character in this story is Robian, a former scholar of Athia who Frey finds in the middle of a break-infested area. Somehow he has retained his humanity even though he is afflicted by the break, although it makes him a bit squibbly and weird.
Whoosh.
And he seems to be carrying the secret for Frey to get back home. I love the wholesome talk between Frey and Robian, and a few more unique and memorable characters like him would have done a lot for the overall narrative of the game. Other than him, most characters are fine, but nothing to write home about. The Tantas are unique and offer a lot of cool opportunities for Frey to learn about Athia's past and grow as a person, but they aren't really very involved in the actual story as much as I'd have liked them to, what with them mentally corrupted and all. From a graphical standpoint, Forspoken is a little hard to rate. The game looks gorgeous, no doubt about it. Athia is one of the most beautiful and diverse fantasy worlds I've ever seen, and it is huge to boot. The art direction and conceptualization are off the charts here, and exploring the world is a treat on the eyes at almost all points in time, if you have the necessary hardware. If you haven't seen it yet, Forspoken is infamous for having ridiculously high-end specs recommended for a good experience, and even if you have these, it doesn't really run all that great. The PS5 version, which I played, gives you the option to choose between fidelity, ray tracing, and performance mode, with anything but performance mode being more or less unplayable. Fidelity mode runs you anywhere between 20 and 30 frames per second at most points, sometimes dropping below that even. That is not how I want to experience my action RPG, so get that shit out of my face. Performance mode runs alright there, I even say pretty well with the current 1.10 patch, but still nowhere near as well as other better looking games. Yes, Forspoken looks very good, but not good enough to warrant performance issues such as this. One thing the game fully delivers on graphically, however, are the spell effects. Every bit of magic looks absolutely stunning, with finishers especially being eye candy that I can't get enough of even after playing the game for almost 50 hours. Also, the game makes incredible use of the PS5's fast loading. In fact, even when fast traveling from one corner of the map to the other, it barely even loads at all. This is straight up spatial magic and probably the most efficient use of the tech I've seen so far. I usually don't talk about user interfaces in my reviews, but Forspoken's is so unique and eye-catching that I can at least mention it. Every bit of the UI looks like a piece of cuff, little golden threads combining to create letters, symbols, and even on-screen prompts like for when you're out of stamina or cuff just blocked a fatal hit. This makes for a wonderfully immersive experience throughout the whole game, including menus. Everything just fits perfectly together and creates one distinct look that is wholly Forspoken. And then there is the fisheye effect. I'm not going to pretend that I understand why they use such a weird style, but almost every piece of interface this game has, from the HUD to most menu screens, looks distorted, like you're looking through a fisheye lens. I won't say it's objectively good, but personally I never had an issue with this. I think it looks unique and it gives off the same vibe as Frey herself. Unique, stylish, but flawed to the point of rubbing some people the wrong way. Something that immediately stood out to me, but for some reason isn't mentioned in any other review I've read, is the music of this game. When I saw that Bear McCreary and Gary Shyman, who are known for their works on God of War and Bioshock respectively, among others, were cooperating on making the soundtrack for Forspoken, I was already expecting this to turn into a phenomenal score, but what they ended up delivering is nothing short of supreme. The composition of Frey's theme, blending orchestral fantasy, choir, and modern hip-hop elements to accentuate not only the setting of the game, but also Frey's character and background, goes above and beyond in setting the atmosphere when you first boot up the game, and each track after that cements this further and further. While Sepal's music is peaceful yet valiant, the different areas' themes outside the safe zone are wild, adventurous, and mysterious, making the break-infested locales feel mythical, almost like nature took back what once belonged to humans. The closer you get to Atanta's seat of power, the more distorted and senseless each theme gets, really driving home how much their sanity has been lost over the years. The combat music is epic and motivating, making full use of the aforementioned choir and almost rock-like drum beats to give you the drive to push further into these lost lands until you come face to face with the bosses, where you can hear clear inspirations from Nobuo Uematsu's work combined with light motives from the zone music to accentuate the bombastically spectacular boss fights. What I will say about the music is that, like the setting of the game, it can feel rather dark at times, because just as there are very few happy moments or people to find in Forspoken, there also aren't a whole lot of relaxing or pleasant tracks in this OST. You've heard a lot of negativity on the dialogue of the game, but has anybody ever really talked about the voice acting itself? Ella Balinska and Jonathan Cake did a tremendous job giving life to Frey and Cuff, making their banter not only enjoyable but also believable.
To be honest, I don't care what you think.
I do have an investment in your decisions. Where thou goest, there go I, and all that.
Yeah, well, whatever magic bound us when I got here hopefully will unbind when I get back.
Pity. I was growing so fond of our partnership.
I wish I could say the same.
I've seen a lot of talk about how in reality nobody talks like they do, and to that I say, so what? It's a game, get over it. Not only that, but there is also a plethora of examples of casual banter like this being used in all kinds of media, even in serious settings. Have you ever watched an anime or recent superhero movies? It's the same thing.
Girlfriend in question is a shape-shifting light elf from New Asgard.
Wow, Dennis.
Okay, well, to be fair, I thought I was dating Megan the Stallion.
I'm sorry, what? Sorry, you thought you were dating Megan the Stallion?
You know what? Scratch that. Those are even worse and nobody gives a shit. Yes, the dialogue can be over the top at times, even unintendedly comedic, but if you just let these phenomenal voice actors do what they do best without judging every single phrase, you'll see that it's quite enjoyable and relatable given the setting of the game. Every other character is also voiced amazingly, with Auden and Robian having some truly heartfelt moments that hit home throughout the story, and the Tantas being amazingly well portrayed in their madness. What I will say is that aside from cutscenes and the Frey/Cuff banter, the dialogue in this game has these weird pauses. There is always a 1 or 2 second break between each line, with characters just standing face to face, not doing anything at all until the next line loads.
Can't believe you're still keeping this place going.
The town won't survive without it.
Yeah, I get it, but...
Look, it's simple. None of us know when we're gonna die, right? And what do you need to get you through the day?
I don't know if this is for some reason intentional, but it is horrendous and makes talking to NPCs on side quests or even sometimes non-cutscene main quests feel very off-putting and unnatural. Even though Forspoken takes place in a medieval fantasy world, and there certainly are your usual knights, archers, and other fantasy combat tropes, Frey herself fights with magic, and magic alone. When you start the game, you will be restricted to using only Frey's innate earth magic, but you'll pick up more types as you progress in the story. The developers didn't really bother to get super creative with the basis used for each spell types, so as you probably already guessed, you'll end up with earth, fire, water, and nope, not wind, it's actually lightning. Well, not that it's really all that different. What they did get creative with, however, are the spells themselves. Over the course of the game, you can learn 3 main, 8 support, and 1 finishing spell for each of the 4 categories, for a total of 48 spells at your immediate disposal, not counting movement magic. We'll cover that later. Each of these can also be upgraded to give them additional damage, reach, or functionality. Every spell works differently, is useful in some situations, and a lot of them can even be combined for devastating effects. For example, using Oubliette to trap an enemy in a water globe and then bursting the globe with another spell for big area damage is not only satisfying to do, but also very damaging to big enemy groups. You can also use Crucible to create a wall of fire around you that most enemies cannot enter, and then use long-range spells like Cluster Bowl to clear out the rabble. All that makes for a very exciting and fluid combat system that has you always experiment with how spells work together and find the best combinations for any given situation. If you play the game on hard, that is. I found that playing the game on anything below below that makes it way too easy. It's not super hard in the first place, and you can easily kill enemies by just spamming your main attacks without even using support spells at all. I've seen quite a few reviews call the combat spammy and boring, and they all had one thing in common. The game was set to normal, sometimes even easy, and they would always just spam the same attack, sometimes not even going as far as scanning enemies for weaknesses. Of course a game is boring if you ignore 90% of your toolkit. That's like reviewing a fighting game by only playing one character and proceeding to call the roster too small. Trust me, play this game on hard, preferably with most of the accessibility options like automatic blocking disabled, and you are highly likely to enjoy the combat a lot for its depth and creativity. I know I did. Speaking of accessibility options, Forspoken has a lot of them, and some of them can make or break your gameplay experience. So for the sake of your enjoyment, here's a list of what I found to help improve my experience by flipping the switch. Turn on automatic item gathering and enhanced item visibility. It only takes away from the traversal if you must stop to collect something every few seconds, and items are by default pretty hard to spot. Set magic parkour sprinting to toggle. You'll be sprinting a lot and don't want to keep pressing that button for 80% of your playtime. Also, having leaping on semi-auto helps a lot with climbing the harder platforming challenges. Definitely turn off auto evasion and blocking. It basically makes you invincible to anything but the deadliest attacks. The most important option to turn off is being able to hit yourself with your own spells. Even with the setting on, they won't damage you, only make you stagger for a second, but having this off makes the game feel much smoother to play, and I for the life of me can't figure out why it's turned on by default. Everything else is, in my opinion, up to personal preference of difficulty and convenience, and doesn't affect the general gameplay. With you now fully prepared to actually have a good time with this game, let's see how you get around the world of Athia. Forspoken prides itself on a new traversal system called magic parkour, and if you haven't noticed by the footage so far, it's pretty damn cool. In essence, the game has a sprint button that puts you in parkour mode, which means you will whoosh and automatically parkour across small obstacles and enemies, giving you unprecedented mobility to not only move around the world, but also fight your enemies. As long as you have parkour active, Frey will automatically dodge any attacks thrown her way that aren't marked with a red cross. These are usually deadly attacks that you have to anticipate and play around yourself, but everything else is fair game for parkouring. Sounds pretty OP, right? Well, it is, and that's why there's a stamina system built around parkouring. When you use parkour to dodge something or run for a long time, it uses 1 point of stamina that only recharges when you don't use parkour. It does recharge rather quickly though, so fighting usually revolves around dodging incoming attacks while finding openings in the enemy's movements to not only attack, but also recharge some of your stamina while you dish out the pain. There are a lot more tricks to the combat than that, but this is still a review, not a guide, so I won't include that here. Feel free to use the comments to ask any lingering questions though. I promise to answer each and every one of them. Since Athia is very large and vertical, you will be parkouring constantly when exploring every corner of the world. Running out of stamina sounds like a pain when you just want to get from one point to the other, right? To counter this problem, the developers have sprinkled little magic fountains all across the map that recharge your stamina as soon as you collect them, and even double as XP to learn new spells or upgrade existing ones. In addition to parkour, you will learn quite a few other handy spells to traverse the huge world map, such as grabbing onto edges and enemies with a fire hook shot and surf across water, running across open plains, swinging from grapple point to grapple point, climbing humongous mountain ranges, and surfing up rivers is a lot of fun, and the sense of freedom this game gives you in exploring its world is second to none. If you love exploring interesting worlds, taking in vistas, or even playing around with the phenomenal photo mode, you will love your time with this game and find some unforgettable sights. That doesn't mean the parkouring is perfect though. Because of its automated nature, you sometimes get caught on a little obstacle and start climbing, even though you just wanted to jump it. In combat, especially with large groups of enemies, you can sometimes get stuck in a dodge loop where you get attacked so much that you can't stop parkouring until you run out of stamina and inevitably get hit. Sometimes even die on higher difficulty, because dying is surprisingly easy in this game. While Frey can effortlessly dodge most attacks, she also takes tons of damage damage from the ones that do hit her. Cuff will take any lethal hit and defend you against an instant game over, but once he does, he'll be unable to do anything for about 30 seconds, so if you get hit again in that time, it's back to your last save, which usually isn't too bad because the game can be saved at any time and frequently auto-saves, so at worst, you might have to run back to where you died and do the fight over. So where are you even running? If you just follow the MSQ or main story quest, you can expect around 15 to 20 hours of combat events, light traversal, cutscenes, and some really cool boss fights. While the combat itself is fun, bosses in Forspoken are where it gets really creative and interesting. You're often required to use not only your combat spells, but also traversal and your environment to survive deadly attacks or get a really damaging attack in. The last boss even introduces an entirely new mechanic used for this fight and the post-game, so there's always something to look forward to while playing through the campaign. The story itself ranges from fine to surprisingly good at times, but a lot of that will also depend on how open you are to experiencing Frey's journey in the first place. I called the game an action RPG a few times during this review so far, but what exactly is so RPG about it? Learning spells? Getting XP? Well, for one, the upgrading of said spells. This isn't done through a simple XP grind, but challenges. Each spell has a specific challenge associated to it that you need to complete to upgrade said magic. Most of these are pleasantly creative. Sometimes you need to hit multiple enemies at once with a single target spell. Other times you must kill an enemy with a melee spell while you're one hit away from death yourself. While there are some duds in the form of deal X amounts of damage, most of them are fun to complete and require you to make the most of your toolkit, but that's not all. Forspoken also features two types of equipment systems. First, completing some activities can yield you new nail designs. Yep, you heard that right. Frey can paint her nails in any design she has unlocked, provided she has the necessary ingredients for the paint. And each of these designs carries certain bonuses, like increasing the power of attack magic when support magic is on cooldown, making your counters more powerful, or even reducing stamina cost. You can paint both hands separately, so this allows for some nice experimenting to find a setup of nails that fits your specific playstyle and style itself if that tickles your fancy. The second system comes in the form of gear. Not really the most creative approach, but I think the nails covered that front already. You can find and craft cloaks and necklaces that each carry a specific trait, similar to the nails, but less powerful. However, each piece of gear has 3 trait slots. You can probably see where this is going. Once you get a piece of gear, you also unlock the ability to put its trait onto your other pieces of gear. With over 40 items to get, there are a lot of traits to play around with and find your favorite power-ups, but it doesn't stop there. On your travels, you will find a range of materials to use in crafting. Crafting, however, doesn't just entail the creation of new gear, it also means upgrading the stats of existing pieces. In addition to traits, your gear also has stats for HP, defense, and each of the 4 magic types that can all be improved by upgrading them with materials. You can also craft healing potions, please do, you'll need a lot of these, or increase your inventory space. All in all, none of Forspoken's RPG elements are overly complicated or deep, but they don't have to be to complement the fast-paced gameplay. Apart from detailed item descriptions, you can also find glossary entries like books, letters, diaries, and other things that provide you with a deeper look into the world and lore of Forspoken. I highly recommend reading these because they will help you get a much deeper understanding and appreciation of the story and characters. Much like Dark Souls or games with similarly non-narrative storytelling, the world of Forspoken is a rabbit hole of interesting events and characters that is only touched on very briefly in the actual campaign of the game. Like any open world game, Forspoken's map is filled with objectives to find and clear, giving meaning to the world and places you visit within it. To break it down, these are the activities you can take part in when you find them. Belfries. These are your typical reach these to mark points of interest on your map towers you probably know from similar games, but with a little twist I thought worked pretty well. Instead of just having stuff pop up after scanning it, the tower puts you into an eagle eye position over the tower where you can see the world from a completely new perspective. It is here that the different map symbols pop up and can then be marked for you to track where to go next. This gives the game a way more exploratory vibe, not just picking point after point from the map, but actually seeing these places from far away and choosing which look the most interesting to tackle. Also, the towers only cover what you can actually see, so they don't mark the positions of some of the more hidden activities like the super bosses. You gotta find these yourself. Treasure chests. See those little purple points on the map? Yep. All of them are some kind of treasure chest containing various items and materials. There are a lot of these, some just sitting there in the middle of some field, some requiring tight platforming to get to, and a few even requiring you to solve a sliding puzzle before you can open them. Even for completion purposes, getting all of these is entirely pointless. You can easily get all the achievements in the game by completing the more involved activities, and since the map won't let you filter these for what kind of items they contain, you'd just be wasting your time getting items you don't even need in most cases. Skip these. Caves, ruins, etc. These are your run-of-the-mill, go there and loot the chests you find inside, and are often accompanied by a stronger group of monsters. Not really anything exciting, but always quick and easy to do if you're hurting for crafting materials. Villages, fortresses, etc. Not all that different from the last activity. These are scripted fights in larger structures, challenging you to defeat groups of enemies you don't usually see out in the open world, and that often reward you with stat upgrades or gear. A bit harder and more involved than caves, but still nothing to write home about. Photo ops. With Frey being the only one who can venture outside of Sepal and owning a smartphone that never seems to lose battery, she promises the children of the city to make photos of the coolest sights she can find. There are 50 of those, and most are incredible places to take in the scenery. Definitely seek all of these out if you like the world of the game. You'll get to see some really cool stuff. Monuments. There are two different types of these. Corrupted ones will give you a stat increase by just finding and attacking them for a bit, while uncorrupted monuments will put you in an instance challenge, ranging from tower defense missions to boss fights and even races. Depending on your combat score, yes, there's a Devil May Cry-esque scoring system in Forspoken that gives you more XP and items the better you fight, and how fast you are, the monuments will give you a ranking between 1 and 5. The higher you rank, the better the reward, so there's also some replay value here. These are some of the most fun non-story activities in the game and worth seeking out. Some are even pretty challenging. Mulberry Founds. The only way to get new spells without expending XP, founds are found rarely and often well hidden in Athia's most remote corners. You can find them by listening to the unique sounds they make when you're in close proximity, and finding them will reward you with a completely new spell. Most of them focused on making traversal of some places of the world faster, less dangerous, or even possible in the first place. Familiars. Cats! Forspoken lets you befriend the Tanta's familiars who are still roaming Athia after their masters fell to the corruption, and they're all cute fantasy cats! Once you see one, you can try to slowly sneak up to it without getting noticed. If it notices you, it'll run away, and you'll have to wait for it to show up again. If you get close to it, you'll befriend the cutie, and it'll show up in any refuge. Your fast travel points where you can craft and sleep. Finding all of them will fill your refuges up with cats of all colors and forms, running around the place, scratching on walls and living the cat life, that is, sleep. They really don't add anything in a gameplay sense, but this is a very cute and fun side activity and rewards you with the fluffiest of all photo mode opportunities. Labyrinths. While technically not a separate entry on the list, I wanted to talk about these as their own thing because they kind of are. These are, for all intents and purposes, dungeons completely separated from the overworld map that were used to seal up some ancient evil way before Frey even got to Athia, and are now infested with their break-corrupted guardians. This sounds amazing on paper, but the reality is that all of these are very linear gauntlets of enemy formations ending in a boss fight and some branching paths leading to treasure. Sometimes you get a small platforming section, but that's it. The problem here is not that they're not fun. They provide some unique combat situations and give you insight into some of the game's more hidden lore as well as new gear. They're just too samey and not overall exciting to explore. If the team had taken a bit more care in creating unique dungeons, maybe add some puzzles or unique parkouring challenges, these would have been the highlight of the game and made it much more fun to complete. Mutants. The last on our list of objectives, mutants are exactly what it sounds like, creatures that that have survived heavy exposure to the break and are very keen to test their newfound powers on anything that enters their turf. In essence, these are mini bosses that hit harder and faster than their less mutated counterparts. Seek these out when you're looking to test your skills in battle and be rewarded with rare materials to use on improving your gear. There is a lot to do in Forspoken if you want to go for 100%, and you'll be rewarded with plenty of upgrades to Frey's toolkit and stats for doing so, but what exactly would you even use them on? Two things actually. First, once you clear the main story, a new quest line will pop up that tasks you with fighting the bosses of the MSQ again, beefed up to provide a challenge even to a decked out Frey. Second, and much more interesting, are the so-called abominations. These are Forspoken's version of super bosses, and they definitely live up to their name by not only being supremely dangerous one-shot machines, but also elusive. Not marked on the map by belfries, you'll have to find their lairs by exploring the deepest, most dangerous parts of the map or Google their location, and what you will find there are the hardest but also most fun fights in the game. Each of the 4 abominations has their own unique arena and movesets, as well as strengths and weaknesses, so it's crucial to be prepared for these encounters by having an appropriate set of gear to give you a fighting chance. If you've made it this far into the video, the first thing I want to do is thank you. It's a long video and it certainly was a ton of work to make, but if you found some enjoyment in watching it, it was worth making. You could really help me out by liking the video and sharing it with people you'd like to see more of the game, or maybe just make fun of me for enjoying it. If you want to support me in continuing to make these videos, you can do so by using YouTube's super thanks to have a cool highlighted comment. I promise I'll answer anything you write there, or become a channel member for just 99 cents and unlock some cool perks across the channel like custom emoji.
Shut up and take my money!
With that said, let's finally get on to the verdict. In our never-ending pursuit of the next big, revolutionary masterpiece that will influence the industry, we may have lost sight of what is truly important in a video game. Are we having fun? Forspoken has garnered scores of criticism across many of its aspects, most of which are justified if overplayed for drama's sake. But what this game is, above all of these points, is fun. Sitting around Athia, fighting fantasy monsters and mutated humans with the sickest and most fleshed out magic system in any game I've played. It's just plain fun. Yes, the story, while not bad, is nothing to write home about, and much of your enjoyment of it will depend on if you can relate to, or at least tolerate, Frey and her struggles. The game is also poorly optimized, not running well on even the best of machines, and the open world, while absolutely stunning, is anything but revolutionary in game design. In fact, I think the game would have been a much better experience if they scrapped the open world approach, made it a linear Devil May Cry-like experience, and put that saved time into creating more of these interesting boss fights. The game could have also been a lot more engaging and memorable had the developers chosen to dial down on the concept of the break a bit. Yes, it's a dangerous corruption and it gives the story higher stakes if the whole continent only has one haven left, but it's counterproductive in the exploratory concept of an open world game. As long as you're not in Sepal, you're always alone. No NPCs to meet, no civilizations to discover. All you find are remnants of things long past, lending even more to the sense of emptiness lingering in the world. The completion process in Forspoken, while repetitive at times, is very enjoyable throughout the roughly 50 hours it will take you to grab that platinum trophy, with some interesting combat and platforming challenges, a beautiful and varied world to explore, as well as some of the most satisfying super bosses I've fought in open world games that force you to make the most of your arsenal of combat and movement spells. Even if the game doesn't click with you right away, I can wholeheartedly recommend giving it a shot if you see it drop in price or it gets added to PS Plus or anything similar. You might be surprised by how much fun you can have with Forspoken. I know I was. Thank you for watching, and an especially big thank you to our channel members who make these videos possible in the first place. Keep on gaming, never forget to have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.